Okay, so this last video is going to move into what this course is primarily going to be about, which is the third category of ethics, which is applied ethics. And so we've talked about meta-ethics, we've talked about normative ethics. Applied ethics are when you take these types of ethical thinking patterns and you apply them in a certain situation. In this case, of course, obviously, we're going to apply them to journalism. So if you don't hear anything else that I say in these videos, or if you don't remember anything else from these videos, here's what I want you to remember, because this is what I want you to do in this course. I want you to be able to articulate how you think about a particular situation or case study, why you think that way, and what does it mean to the world around you. So when you're facing one of the dilemmas that are presented as case studies in this course, it's not enough to just tell me your opinion about things, because your opinion matters. But in this case, we're thinking about how we should think about things more broadly, not you specifically necessarily. And your opinion needs to be grounded in some sort of ethical foundation in order for you to be able to successfully meet the outcomes of this course. So, for example, if you're faced with a situation, I want you to be able to say, well, if I was in this situation, I would think about this from the deontological perspective, for example, and I would be concerned about what sorts of rules are at play. Or I might be thinking about that from a utilitarian perspective, and I think that these are the kinds of outcomes that might be possible, and this is the one that I think might be the best solution. Applied ethics carries with it the understanding that there's a particular context that's involved, and so you always need to take into consideration that we're talking about journalism in this context. So we're not talking about religion, or we're not talking about your family, we're not talking about your culture. All of those things are relevant to who you are and what you bring to the table when you're making decisions. But we're going to be using things like the Society for Professional Journalism Code of Ethics as our sort of framework for making decisions about journalism. So while there may be a lot of belief systems and value systems that you have in place because of your background and your experiences and everything about your life up until this point, what I want you to be doing is trying to take a step back from that and trying to apply the concepts that we're learning in class to the situations. So what I'm going to be doing throughout the semester is trying to get you to think about how you think about situations, and also to think about how other people might think about that same situation. It is important to understand how you're approaching the situation and how other people might also be approaching it, and what that does in the situation, because it does matter. Not everybody's on the same page all the time. People are coming at things from different angles, and it does matter. So, as citizens of the world, and we all are citizens of the world, and some of you are future journalists, as citizens of the world and or as future journalists, we need to be able to be making the best possible choices that we can in that situation. And this course is going to help you, give you some ideas about how to make those choices and how to think about them. Okay, so here's an example of that. A way to apply the three ethical frameworks that we talked about at the beginning in the second video. There's a classic thought exercise that the basic situation is you are sitting in your living room, somebody breaks through the door and they have a gun, and they demand that you tell them where your roommate is because they're going to kill your roommate. So the basic situation is about lying. You're faced with this dilemma. The dilemma is, do you tell the person where your roommate is or not? And if you think about it from a deontological perspective, remember, deontologists are focused on rules. So one of the rules that might be relevant in this case is you don't lie, that lying is wrong. So if you are true to deontology and you believe that these rules are important and you believe that you should not lie in any situation regardless of the circumstances, then the ethically right thing to do in that situation would be to tell this person where your roommate is, because that would be the truth. People would have a hard time stomaching that, of course. So if you think about it from a utilitarian perspective, utilitarians are thinking about outcomes. So if you think about all the different kinds of outcomes that could be at stake, the person might go into the next room and find your roommate, and something might happen. He might kill your roommate might jump out the window and get away, who knows. The person might shoot you, the person might get arrested. There's just a million different outcomes that you can think about. So if you're thinking from a utilitarian perspective, then you want to think about what the best possible outcome could be. And in this case, unless there's a lot of stuff that we don't know about, which there could be, but just taking this at face value without reading too much into it, the best possible outcome is that this person will not shoot your roommate. So you want to make a choice that will allow your roommate to not get shot. So that best possible choice might be to lie to the person with the gun and tell them that your roommate is somewhere else, or to tell them that you don't know where your roommate is, or to make a loud distracting noise or create a diversion of some sort so your roommate can get away. Whatever choice you make, you're basing it on the ethical outcome that your roommate will not get shot. So that gives you a little bit of an idea about how to think of a general situation from ethical standpoints, frameworks. When we think about this from a journalism perspective, my whole goal with this course is to make you hyper aware of all of the different ethical situations that are in the news. As journalists, a lot of you will be faced with making ethical choices frequently on your job. But even for the rest of us, for those of us who are not journalists, you need to be critical. You need to be critical news watchers, critical media watchers. You need to be able to understand all of the ethical implications that might be at stake when you're watching the news on TV or when you're reading something online. So by the end of this course, I want you to say, I had no idea there were so many ethical issues in journalism today. That's what I'm hoping to get at. If we think about plagiarism as a case study, a thought exercise for the types of situations that a journalist might face, ethical situations that a journalist might face, I'm assuming that you know what plagiarism is, and plagiarism is essentially taking somebody else's work and passing it off as your own. So whether that's a piece of writing or whether it's a case, whether it's a test or a quiz or anything, it doesn't matter. It's just using somebody else's words but presenting them as if they were your own. So if you're thinking about plagiarism from a deontological standpoint, you're thinking about it from a rules standpoint. So a deontologist might think about the rules that are associated with this as such. One rule might be that stealing is wrong. Okay, that's a rule that most people would be able to get their hands around. Another one would be pretending that somebody else's work is my work is wrong because it's deceptive. So a deontologist might think, based on rules such as those, a deontologist might say that I should not plagiarize because it would be wrong. A utilitarian is going to approach it thinking about all the different outcomes that could come from plagiarizing. And this gets interesting because some of the outcomes can be negative and some of them can be positive. Some of the negative outcomes that they might think about are things like I might get caught, I might lose my job, I might lose my reputation, people might not trust me as much anymore, the organization that I work for might have some sort of consequences because of my actions, etc., etc., etc. And there's lots of potential negative outcomes that could be associated with it. But there are possible positive outcomes as well. Could get away with it. Could use it in my portfolio, and if it's a really good piece, I could get a better job because of it. I could get recognition for being a good writer. Of course, you could also get recognition for being a bad writer if it's a poor example that you're passing off as your own. So there's all these different positive outcomes that could possibly come with it, and they all, for the most part, hinge on the assumption that you won't get caught. So getting caught is a bad thing in most people's mind. So I think that regardless of which way you think about it, from a utilitarian standpoint, most of the roads, most of the outcomes lead to not getting caught as the most positive outcome. And therefore you should not do it. Regardless of whether you think about it from a utilitarian standpoint or a deontological standpoint, most people will come to the conclusion that they should not plagiarize, but they're coming at it from two very different perspectives and for two very different reasons. So that just gives you a little bit of an idea about how to think about things and how different people might be thinking about the exact same situation. So the way this course is going to work is each week we're going to be talking about specific situations within the journalism and media world, and they are all going to be ethically oriented in one way, shape, or form. And I'm going to ask you to be taking a stand on those ethical issues, and I want you to be able to analyze them. I want you to think really hard about what kinds of ethical frameworks might be at play, and what pieces of the code of ethics for journalists are important to consider. And you'll be reading about the code of ethics in next week's reading, so no worries about that right now. So going back to what I said earlier, if you don't remember anything else, I want you to remember that I want you to be thinking critically. This class there are some right and wrong answers, but this class is mostly about your ability to think critically and to communicate how you think about something and why you think that way. So I want you to take a stand about something, and I want you to be able to defend it. I want you to be able to look at a situation from multiple perspectives, and I want you to be able to figure out what you think is the right choice based on your analyzation of those perspectives. So here are the main objectives for this course. One is to be able to understand things from a meta perspective, which is all the different ways that there are to think about the particular situation. Two is to situate yourself and your own moral codes and beliefs in that situation. And the third is to be able to successfully apply the concepts that we're learning in the course to the situation, and to be able to say which ones you think are important and why. So that's it in a nutshell. These videos are just to give you a little introduction to what we're going to be doing in the course. If you have any questions, definitely shoot me an email. My contact information is on the course website. And I look forward to spending time with you this semester, and we will get started on content next week. But this week, please definitely peruse all the information that's in the Week 1 folder and the Getting Started folder, and definitely introduce yourself and follow all the steps in the Introductions discussion board. And let me know if you have any questions. Have a great week, and I'll be talking to you soon.